Hi, everyone. Welcome to the National Parents Union and the Nightly Restorative Check-In. I am Dr. Enjolie Laferrie, and it is January 29th. This is actually the first time that I didn't have to look at the date. I must be learning. Anyway, hello, everyone. How are you? How's it going? It's actually raining, you guys. I'm on autumn land in this beautiful Sonoran desert in Tempe, actually, but here in Arizona. And it's raining, and because it's the desert, we really appreciate when we get rain. It's a treat. And so some of you know I do my intros, but I originally grew up in Southern California, but I've been here here in Arizona since 2004. So living here for this long makes me really appreciate fall and winter weather. Okay, so this, like I said, is the Nightly Restorative Check-In. This is the brainchild of Marisol Queveda Rerucha. She hosts the show on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I really appreciated actually her Wednesday guest. So you want to make sure to catch her on Mondays. But when she conceived of this show, she thought about that we all need somebody to kind of check in on us, right? And especially, right, maybe in the evenings, I think about what I want to be doing on a Friday. I want to chill, I want good food, and I want to be able to have a conversation where I don't have to worry about what I need to do that evening or to prepare for the next day, and to be able to just languish and have time to expand and share. So that's my vision for educators, parents, professionals, caregivers, right? Anyone who takes care of someone else, that's what this show will be. Marisol brought me on at when her show first started back in March. NPU is actually just completed its first year anniversary, but she brought me onto her show because I'm a psychologist and a hypnotherapist, among a couple of other skills and talents. And on the first show, I introduced the breath pattern titled 478. It's not my breath pattern. I just got taught it through my mindfulness practices and experience. So the way that we use 478 is you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7 seconds, and then you exhale for 8 seconds. And we do that 4 times around. I'll count it out for you. One of the unique things, if this is your first time, is as you're exhaling for that 8 count, you kind of want to, it's a mix of holding your breath while also releasing it. It feels weird the first time, but once you get used to it, it's not so bad. I guess a better way of me saying it is it's suspending your breath on the exhalation. If at any point you get lost in this breath pattern, just go back to your normal breath and then join us back with the 4 count. Yeah, some other little tips that I tell you all is I recommend that you kind of uncross your body, that you close your eyes, that you put your feet on the floor or cross-legged, just kind of be in a position that feels comfortable for you. And if you can't close your eyes, at least pick a focal point, because our visual field is a sense that kind of is the most easily distracted. All right, and now I'm calming myself down. Y'all know I have my little routine. Okay, cool, I'm good. I usually get so excited and I gotta calm my energy down. So go ahead and close your eyes or get set, and however you're planning on doing this breath pattern. Go ahead and inhale, taking a normal breath, exhale out. And on your next inhalation, breathe in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Go back to your normal breath. Cool. That actually feels good. You guys know sometimes I get a sense, right, of how the breath is for you all. And so I was able to kind of have a deeper breath in my gut, which means that someone around here has dropped down right into their parasympathetic system, right? That relaxation response. Okay. I always say, like, one day we're going to like talk about all the responses you all have to that breath pattern. But we have a lot to cover today, and we have some guests that I'm so excited to bring on. So I don't want to, wait a minute more. Let me finish introducing myself, right? I've told you who I am. I always tell you who I am professionally. Personally, right? Like I said, I'm from Southern California. On my father's side, on my paternal side, we are Afro-Cuban. So we are Taino and Arawak. On my mom's side, we are from Guatemala. So we're Maya. I'm a mom to a 21-year-old daughter, which came in here already and said, hello. Hi, baby. This is my daughter, everyone. And I think this is Zoila's mom, maybe? Or yeah, I don't know. Or maybe this is you, Zoila. Anyway, somebody named Zoila is watching, and I don't think it's you. But anyway, you guys have also met, those of you who are regular viewers, you've seen my siblings that were on the first season. They were some of my guests. Some of you also know that I am a part of the Siwapatli Collective. So that is an identity that's particularly important to me and grounds my community work. It really gives me a sense of belonging. We focus on Indigenous mothering, and we support mothers and birthing people. We like to say from womb to tomb. And same thing, you've actually met quite a few people from the collective. They've been guests on this show here. Okay, so really fast, I got to explain like why I'm wearing yellow. And actually, let me pop in the unicorns and bring in our guests. They're also wearing yellow because they're my friends and they love me and they're like, listen to my bossiness. We are wearing yellow because it's school choice week. Typically, we think of school choice week as being kind of a phenomenon that's impacting kind of younger children, right? Kind of this K-8 phenomenon. But I wanted to bring that even to, the community college system, because we are all professors at the community college. So if I were to like to tell, it feels like the beginnings of a joke of what do you get when you cross Silvia, a math professor, with Zoila and I, who are both psychologists and psychology professors. I was, and Sharon, who Dr. Yee, who is a sociologist. I should have doctored you also. Dr. Llamas-Flores, Dr. Tovar-Blank, Dr. Yee. How are you all, everyone?
Good. A little nervous.
What are you nervous about?
Well, I mean, I've never been live, but I'm going to try to think about it. Just the four of us, the unicorns, and we should be good.
We should be good. I'd say I'm surprised to hear you, Zoila, that you're nervous because like you're such a good speaker and so clear, and I see you get up in front of people all the time. But like regardless of age or profession, you can get nervous, right?
Yes.
Sylvia, how are you?
I'm good. I am brain fried. I had a long day with students, but overall, I'm healthy and safe. I'm good, and like Zoila, a little nervous.
Oh, Sharon, see, I should have started with you. I messed up the rotation. Okay.
No, it's good. I'm honestly a little distracted. I can hear my little boy crying, and so I just checked in with my husband, and our son, I guess, hit himself jumping on the bed. So I can hear him crying, but he's fine. So I'm just a little distracted.
Malcolm. Well, I know, pobrecito. I mean, so if you guys, we're all like, so in the collective, we always say we operate at the pace of our children. I would say that the show and the way that I do life is no different. So if you need to go step off and mute and go check on him, the world's not going to end because we have, other people here to share the screen. But that's such an example of just like real life, and so all of us I'm going to let you all introduce yourself. So let's do that first. I just said what you teach, right? But however else you want to introduce yourself, go ahead and do that. And Sharon, we had agreed that we'd start with you, so I won't mess up the rotation this way.
Sure. Okay, so hi, I'm Sharon. I do teach sociology. I teach primarily introduction and race and family, sometimes sports as well. I enjoy and love my job as a community college faculty member. I love my discipline, and I'm pretty active in it at both regional and national levels. Hey, Beyonce. um, and I am from the Phoenix area. I grew up in Glendale, Arizona, and I actually teach at Glendale Community College. So it's really nice for me. I feel like I'm giving back to my community. So I really appreciate that. Um, I I guess I'll give my also ethnic background since Enjolie did it.
Whatever
Um,
you.
sure, why not? So on my mother's side, we are Italian and Sicilian, and on my father's side, we are Chinese. And so it makes for an interesting combination. And life, it's awesome. I love it. So I can't remember what else you said. I guess maybe I'm a little nervous too. So I'm just going to stop rambling and let Silvia talk.
I guess I'm next. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Silvia. And like Anjali said, I teach math at Chandler Gilbert. I've been teaching for 22 years. So this is my 22nd year teaching. And I've taught high school, I've taught at a four-year institution, and now at the community college. And by far, the community college is where I belong. Like if I finally found my space, and this is it. I'm from Boyle Heights and from LA, like Anjali from California. I have two kids, Marcus, he's almost 18, believe it or not, which is crazy. And Ariana, she's going to become a quinceañera pretty soon. No quinceañera because we're in a pandemic, but she's going to turn 15. I've also taught bilingual education. So even though I'm a math professor, my background is also in language policy, specifically in math education. So I focus on issues of equity and social justice in math. I think that's pretty much it. So I'll turn it over to Zoila.
Thanks, Sylvia. I'm Zoila. My students call me Dr. Z because my last name is a handful. And my last name, Tovar-Blank, is actually my married name. My maiden name was actually longer, so that's a totally different story. But I am a psychology professor at Chandler Gilbert Community College. I have my PhD in counseling psychology, just like Enjolie, and so I'm actually skilled in both the counseling and the psychology side. In fact, I was a licensed clinical psychologist, and I was a counseling faculty member at Scottsdale Community College for several years before I transferred over to psychology. I just switched disciplines. I found that teaching was actually my passion, and I've been teaching for 15 plus years. And I'm teaching in my home. So I was born and raised here in Arizona. I went to Chandler High School, so any wolves out there, went to Chandler High School, grew up in the Gilbert area. So I knew that I ultimately wanted to come back to Chandler Gilbert Community College. And so when I got the ability to transfer over, I took it and ran. And so like Sharon, I love giving back to the community in which I was raised. And what I love in particular is being able to before pandemic, be able to go out into, the community and run into my students and see them either at Fry's or at the movie theater going, "Hey, Dr. Z." And that's why I love the community colleges, that community feel. And family is so important to me because of my cultural background. So I am half Mexican, half Peruvian. My dad is from Mexico and my mom is from Peru. And in fact, I'll do a shout out to my mom. That was my mom, Zoila Tovar, on Facebook. She's watching. She's the original Dr. Z, for the record. And so my parents met at ASU as graduate students, and they then decided to stay in Arizona. So I'm grateful for that. love my family so much that I live next door to my parents, and my sister lives 4 houses down the street with my nephews. And I'm just so blessed to have family nearby. My 10-year-old son, Ben Hameen, is my coworker. We literally sit next to each other. His space is right over here. We do school all day, every day during the pandemic. And I'm also blessed to be a military spouse. My spouse, Jeff, is active duty military posted with the Air National Guard here in at Sky Harbor. So I'm just so excited to be here with my fellow unicorns.
Girl, I thought you were nervous.
Well, once I get talking about what I love, and I love family and you guys.
You're funny. You did great. So, and you were like, and you also gave me the perfect segue. So, okay. When I advertised the show, right, I talked about that. We call ourselves the unicorns. Who wants to tell the story about why we call ourselves the unicorns? Whoever.
So I guess
Sharon.
I'll start. I was the one that gets to talk about stuff. And then you guys can fill in where I leave off. But if I remember correctly, since it was a few years ago, we were talking about how there are so very few, all of us do identify as women of color, and there are so very few women of color who are faculty members, who are full-time faculty members, and who also have PhDs. And so it's almost like, yeah, we're a unicorn. We're these mythical creatures that actually do exist. And I know I talk about it with my students, because when you actually ask them, like, hey, have you ever had a woman of color who has a PhD or doctoral degree as a professor, most of them say no. And I think we also talked about, if I remember correctly, even in our own experiences, I know for me, it wasn't until my master's degree where I had someone who was a woman of color faculty member guiding me. And even then, it wasn't, she was my my master's thesis chair. I didn't actually have a class with her. It wasn't until my PhD program where I actually had a faculty member as a professor, like in a classroom kind of thing. So that's kind of where the unicorn thing came from. And we also all went to ASU as another little thing. Yeah.
Good. Does anyone want to add in the story? I mean, yes, that's definitely the mythical creature thing, just we don't, so I was making fun of you, Sharon. I'll give stats. I mean, depending on your ethno-racial background, it's really anywhere from about like 1% to 3%, of individuals within our respective groups, that have doctoral degrees and are women of color. So maybe a little bit more common, right, for Asian Americans, but still, like we're still, it's infinitesimal, right? Does anyone want to add anything to the story? Or maybe, I think that was a good point of self-reflection, Sharon, of when's the first time we saw ourselves in a professor?
I can share that I did my undergrad at Stanford University, and we had a wonderful psychology faculty, but I only had one professor, female of color. She was Asian, but I didn't see her until nearly senior year. And so it wasn't until my PhD program, like you said, Sharon, that I had women of color as role models. Now, granted, I am blessed to have a mother who is a woman of color with a PhD, but not in my field. She has her PhD in Spanish literature. So I did at least have that kind of role model, but in my field, I didn't see it for a really long time. And also, I have to admit, it's my mom, so I don't see her like that. I love you, Mom.
You're smart. We know. We love you. We're awesome. Can you look at that news later? Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Silvia.
So I was just going to add that, especially being in my field, which is, math, it's definitely a male-centered or male-dominated field. So it wasn't I was actually very lucky that it was during my master's program at UCLA that I got to work with some of the most amazing and phenomenal math educators. And one in particular, her name is Susie Hokinson. She really was my mentor from back in grad school. And even up to this day, 20 some years later, I'm still working with her in different capacities. We're doing charity work, we're doing volunteer work, focusing on social justice. So I was very fortunate, but as an undergrad, 0 women, none.
Yeah, and that was a really good prompt, Sharon. Good job. You're going to host the show next week. That I don't think I saw or had a woman of color professor that actively like was in front of the classroom actually until my doctoral program. And I'm thinking it was Dr. Arredondo, so Zoila and I were in the same program at ASU. And you know what? I don't share this enough, so I should. And here's your mom's comments. And Kim Mascaro, that's Dr. Mascaro as well. She was on the show. Sorry, what the point I was going to make, hold on, I lost my point. Hold on. It's going to come back.
PA.
No, there was another one. Damn. I really lost it doing all this management. It'll come back. Women of color. Dang. Anyway, okay. It's gone. It's gone. All right. So dang, and I'm really like trying to pull it back, but I won't. Let's also, I guess, talk about how we came together. So it was in addition to kind of our experiences and maybe not feeling seen, right, or represented through our years growing up. I got it now. That was the fluff that I needed. I was a direct admit, and some of us were. I think I want people to know that. So I was a direct admit from my undergrad into graduate school into my PhD program. So I didn't complete a master's degree, and I didn't know that was a thing. So I'm the eldest in my family of the children, right? And it wasn't until actually I was in undergrad that I knew I wanted to become a psychologist. I knew I was PhD bound, but then a classmate told me, hey, do you know that you can just apply directly? So some fields allow for that. Sometimes the hard sciences don't, what's what we call it, the hard sciences, right? Don't always allow for that. And Zoila, was that your experience? Were you a direct admit as well?
Yes, I was a direct admit too. I didn't know that you could apply directly into a PhD. In fact, I had applied to the Masters of Counseling program at ASU first. And it was Dr. Arciniega who told me, he's like, Mija, no, just apply to the PhD. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I applied to both at the same time, and they just took the PhD instead.
Yes. Yeah. So I share that, certainly not to brag, but to know, like, I have immigrant parents. Like, my parents did not have this scholastic experience, so I was figuring out most of this on my own. And it was just a classmate that shared it with me. And I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. Let's transition to kind of what it was like for all of us to meet one another around the same time. So Zoila, you were already at Chandler Gilbert Community College, but Silvia, Sharon, and I all came in at the same time. And so we had our first year together. Let's talk about, what it's like for us to have one another in professional space. Whoever wants to start. Who wants to?
Okay, I'll go. So I had transferred over to Chandler Gilbert maybe a couple years prior, and there wasn't a lot of women of color professors, really, to be honest. There was maybe one colleague that I just adored, but it was just so nice to then be able to connect with Enjolie, who was actually in my discipline, and we also had that background together. But then other colleagues, other women of color who had similar backgrounds and similar passions, because we all love teaching. Like, number one, like, we all love teaching, we all love our students, and we'll do just about anything to do that. And so it was just finally nice to find a group of mujeres that we can connect with like that.
So I actually remember when I came back for my second interview, I met Zoila. I don't know, Zoila, if you remember that or not. I think you were coming out of the CTLE or something. But I just remember thinking, wow, she was really nice. And obviously I hadn't met a lot of people there because I was interviewing. And it was all the way across town from you. But, I got this like sense of friendship. And I remember thinking like, okay, well, if I get this job, like I definitely want to be friends with her because she seems awesome. And then I remember meeting Enjolie. I was like doing stuff in my office and my mom was with me because we were going to see a community play for a different friend. And I was like trying to hurry up. And Enjolie was just like, hi, we're going to be friends.
Wait, I walked in and I looked at your mom and I said, hi, Mom. And then, because I was obviously your mom. Yes, I did. And I made myself at home in your office and I actually was talking to your mom more than I was talking to you, but I did. I knew we were going to be friends. Yes.
Well, I do remember you saying that, though. That's when you're like, we're just going to be besties. So I don't know what else to tell you, kind of thing. And I remember meeting Silvia at the I think it was the all faculty thing.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And I just remember thinking like, these are my people, right? Like, okay, this was a bit, in some ways, a big transition for me because I've been in higher ed for 20 years as my professional career, but it's been on the administrator side and academic advising and stuff. And so I was just like, okay, we'll see how the faculty go, because sometimes faculty can be a little precarious.
Competitive.
Wow. I felt at home. And yeah, it was really nice to be with like similar minded, strong women and women of color, just being able to understand, although I am not Latina, being able to have some similar
who made you Latina?
Well, my husband's Latino, so
that's right.
And she speaks Spanish. Yes, and she speaks Spanish too.
I mean, I grew up in a very highly predominant Latino area, so I can I get down.
She got street cred. Okay. Yes. Silvia, yeah, what's your version of us meeting, or what it's like to kind of have us?
I think you all nailed it pretty much. But I do remember, Enjolie, that it was at the very beginning when we were meeting for the first year cohort. Do you remember that? In small groups and Agave, I think it was. And you came up to me and you said, I'm going to be your friend, or something like that. And I thought, okay.
You guys, I do. Actually, wow, this is going to be like TMI for some people. If I like you, I like you. And it's pretty instantaneous, So, and I know right away if we're going to get down or not. So that's obviously being proven here. So what else was that? I just walked up to you and said, I like you. And then I remember. And then I was like, come on, come meet this person. Come meet that person. Yeah.
Exactly. And after that, we were just the unicorns.
Yes. Aw. That's so sweet. And I think like we're telling like the good parts, the fluffy parts, but like the real is that it takes a lot. Like, and I'm not saying this in like oh, poor us, but also acknowledging it takes a lot to be a person of color, to kind of achieve the level of education and the level of professional accolades that we have. And we often do it without visual representation. And we do it without feeling like we have our homies around us, So, and then sadly, something we don't talk about is that like often you'll get into professional space and it continues to be competitive, right? And we have never been that way with one another. I felt so lucky to have Zoila because we are not competitive. We're like, our psychology department was one of like really sharing information. They still are that way. The only reason why I'm speaking past tense is some of I shared last week that this is the first semester that I left and stopped teaching to pursue my other interests, right? Some of the things I'm doing here at NPU, but also things that I'm doing with the collective and just other independent consulting projects. But yeah, it's important, and we don't talk about it enough, how it is hard to feel that sense of community. So when you find it, you grab onto it.
I'd like to add something really quickly. While we weren't competitive with each other, we were faced with competition from other faculty, both other faculty of color and other faculty. And I don't want to get emotional just yet because I was saving it for the end. But
do it.
Having the unicorns tell me I'm not crazy when I experienced a microaggression, or I experienced something that I knew was wrong, but other faculty didn't see it. It just, I knew you guys had my back, but most importantly, I wasn't crazy. Because before, when you're the only person of color or one of very few, you don't know whether this is truly right or wrong. So you guys had my back, and I love it.
Yeah, I kind of want to add on to that because I got something to say about that. Surprise, surprise. But yes, I mean, you know, knowing that I had the support of the three of you, that is the only reason I was able to make it through some challenging times where I was being gaslit and experiencing microaggressions also on a daily basis that were just completely asinine. I mean, let's be real. Enjolie and I look nothing alike, and people got us confused all the time. I can't even. But knowing that I had the support, right? And then knowing that, you know, even though I'm not at Chandler Gilbert and now I'm over at Glendale, I still have your support, and that we still have, you know, our connections where, you know, like every workplace, nothing's perfect, you know, so if one of us has a bad day with something, you know, knowing that we can reach out and there's no judgment, it's just love and support. When often, and especially in academia, and especially for women of color, it's not a supportive environment because there's so few of us, right? What'd you say?
I said absolutely.
Oh, yeah, and it's not just in terms of faculty. I mean, it also happens, you know, in other areas on campuses. So it's not like we're unique in this by any means. And I won't drop any statistics or not or anything, since I'm the Asian and I do all the stats apparently.
Which is basically, we're not microaggressing her. We just identified her as being our stats person. Like, right. Zoila teaches stats. So
Zoila teaches the stats. And if you ask me to do math, it's not good. I mean, Sylvia's a math teacher. I'm like, okay. But anyways, you know, it's always nice to be able to come back to ourselves, right? And even though we all have different experiences, just having that, I don't know the right word I'm looking for. Togetherness, I guess.
Camaraderie, comadrismo. Yeah. You wanted to get in here. Go ahead. Did you want to?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
No, I was just going to add that for me, I was in a very unique situation because I wasn't on the main campus. So I was at the Williams campus. So I was very isolated from the rest of my math colleagues, and for the most part, all of the colleagues, because I was kind of isolated. So having this group made it so much easier for me because, again, I had that support system that I didn't necessarily have on campus because I was on a different campus. So, you know, thank you all for providing that support.
And I will echo, you know, that idea of having one another's back, of like, everybody here always has my back. But I mean, Zoila, were you what it felt like to walk in knowing that somebody had my back? I mean, like from the second I set foot in there, I knew you were looking out for me. And I faced some unique challenges in the time that I was there. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out how I want to talk about it, you know? So I would say that's probably not a surprise that I consider myself to be like a shiny and bright person, right? So people pay attention to me, right? That's kind of like why I'm comfortable hosting a show. And I think that shininess and brightness got a lot of attention that always wasn't positive. And all of you guys helped me really like navigate that for like basically like the haters. I mean, that's really what it was, you know? We have a question in here from actually Beyonce. So let's throw that in. And then I want us to also loop into like, let's start talking about why community college and things like that. So Beyonce's question is, what were our motivators in choosing the fields that maybe are predominantly male or that don't represent us? Do we ever experience self-doubt or lack of confidence? And I want to thank Judith for her comment about it's beautiful to see our support. Judith hosts the morning shows in Spanish with me. Whomever, y'all know I have no control. Who wants to start?
I'll start this time.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I went into math because I was good at it, and I hated reading and writing. So the only thing that was left was math. So I said, F it, I'm going to go into math. And when I went through the process of, getting my bachelor's and my master's and eventually the doctorate, it was, I don't know, I can't explain it. It was validating because to me, that's a field that is so highly dominated by males that I wanted to be that that person, that woman, that female that would, I don't know, I can't explain it, but do you know what I'm trying to say?
Like, you wanted to be that, like, that example to other people, or you wanted to show that you could be that person?
Not necessarily to show, but I really wanted to represent people of color, women, particularly women of color, Latinas, who oftentimes question their ability to go into a field like mathematics, or any field for that matter. But a field like mathematics is such a male-dominated field that I wanted to represent, and I wanted to be able to support. And that's why I knew I wanted to teach, even when I was in high school. And that's why I've been teaching my entire career.
And, it's such a good example too, as you hear our backgrounds, to know that this is like the caliber, typically this, like, I don't think we're anomalies, right? This is the caliber of professors that you do get at a community college that is often not talked about. And so I'll add in and say, many of us were interviewing at a 4-year institution nearby, and also, right, other 2-year institutions. And there are many professors that teach at both 4 and 2-year institutions, right? But let's kind of, I guess I'll just weave in facts, right, as you all talk. Who else wants to mention, right, your motivators for choosing your field, and what you've experienced, whether it was doubt or lack of confidence?
I will go. Like I mentioned, my mother does have a PhD in Spanish literature. My dad has 5 sisters, 3 of whom have PhDs. So highly educated women of color surround me, but they were all PhDs. And I said, hell no, I'm going to be the first MD in the family, right? Because I was a stubborn mule. And
were
so
past tense?
What?
I said were past tense.
I don't. My mom's watching. She's going to agree. Anyway. And so I wanted to be a pediatrician, and I wanted to help children. I just wanted to help and serve others. And so I went off to Stanford thinking bio-pre-med, bio-pre-med, bio-pre-med. And it sucked. I hated it. I was literally, I was miserable. And I ended up signing up to be a research assistant for a psychology grad student who is now Dr. Joseph Brown. He was an African-American male, and I was still a biology major, but miserable. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And Dr. Brown said to me, and this is when I was Zoilita, I was little Zoila. He said, Zoilita, why are you still majoring in biology when you're so unhappy? And no one had ever called me out on it. And he did. Mm-hmm. And I changed my major to psychology my junior year. I was terrified at what my parents would say because I waited so long to change my major. I also wasn't going to graduate on time. That was going to cost more money. But my parents surprised me, which I shouldn't have been surprised. But, when you're 18, 19, 20, you think the world is going to die because of what your parents may or may not agree with. And I changed my major to psychology, and I've been the happiest I've ever been. I just had to recognize that the essence of who I am is helping others, and it doesn't have to be through medicine. And in this case, I'm helping others and serving others through mental health and psychology.
And I think your example, it really communicates that developmentally it's common. It is common for young people to enter into their 2 and 4 year institutions, have a sense of what they want to do, but it not be totally clear. And for their path to kind of what looks like stray or be windy, for a little while. That's a common thing because developmentally, right, they're still in the stage of figuring themselves out. And I think one of the things that community college offers is, like you said, the financial piece. That's normal. Parents should expect that their kids need some time to figure things out. So why not figure it out paying a little bit like fraction of the cost, right? Instead of spending more than necessary, right? Sharon, let me let you jump in.
Yeah, so actually I do have some data on that information. I know, of course I do, right? So on average, a student will change their major about 6 different times. So it's very common. Yeah, I know, right? And it's a lot cheaper to do it at the community college. For example, in Maricopa, where we're all at, you're paying around $300 on average for one class versus at all 3 of the state institutions or state universities, you're spending about $12,000 per semester. So, it's a much easier way to figure out what you want to do at a community college where you're still getting excellent education. It's not like the show Community where, you have unqualified doing it. The community college is actually one of the most coveted positions for people who want to teach. And the trend is that more people more institutions are requiring PhDs, for their faculty members. In terms of how I went into sociology, I was pre-business. And I took a sociology class my first semester. I only took it because my friend Frances and I were commuting from Glendale all the way to Tempe. And I needed a class. She was in it. And I was like, all right, well, this way, we just have one class together and we'll figure it out. And it had 500 people in it.
Wow.
And it was a little overwhelming. But the professor I had, Dr. Pete Padilla, who I still am in contact with this day, the way he taught, he just kind of turned on a light for me. And I was like, well, this just makes sense. And it honestly, it felt like coming home. And then, so I talked to him and went to office hours, which students should always do, go to office hours and contact professors. And I asked him, I was like, I really like this stuff. It just makes sense. What could you do with sociology? And he was like, oh, you can do a lot. Why don't you take another course, see if you really like it? So I did. And then I changed my major my freshman year, and also was terrified to tell my parents because my dad's dream was for me to take over his accounting business. So that was a hard dinner conversation to have. But I will say, it was fine. They accepted it and supported me. And yeah.
I know where you're going. So let's go there.
So anyway, one of the things that Dr. Padilla did, though, was he talked to me about grad school education. And he told me, he's like, hey, have you ever thought about getting a master's or a PhD? And before then, no one had ever talked to me about that. I didn't even know those things were possible. And so because of him, I started thinking about grad school and things like that. And then I saw a lot of kind of inequalities because my career path was a little different, where I chose to work in education, but not in the faculty route because I knew I wanted to have a family and it just didn't seem compatible. And so I went with the higher ed route, but I didn't feel like I was making an impact enough. And so I was like, what I'm doing I didn't feel like I was helping students enough and giving back to my community. And so that's why I switched to faculty. I think that answers this question.
Yeah, no, and Sharon, I thought you were getting emotional thinking about your dad, and so.
Yeah, I mean, he never got to see me graduate with my bachelor's or any of it. So.
Yeah.
And
so, but so yeah, Sharon's dad passed away when she was in college, right? Early college, right? I think you were 19?
I was 21.
21. Okay. Sylvia, did you want to jump in and tell part of the story, or?
I was just going to add to that and say it's a little bit different, but 2 weeks before I started the PhD program, my mom passed away. So it resonated with me when you talked about your dad right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys, people who follow the show quite a bit, know my story that both my husband and my father passed away in the middle of me being kind of in my doctoral program. So, it just, you guys, something I always said when I was in graduate school, and actually I said it to Dr. Arciniega, Zoila, was I lived during my graduate career, some of you know, I had a boyfriend at the time in Chicago. I would travel, I would turn in a paper to my friends and be like, hey, turn that in for me. And then I would go home. I lived, I owned businesses, and that's not common, but I think that there's so much more to who we are than just our professional lives, right? Which is why I introduce myself the way that I do at the beginnings of shows, but I think that's also what is missing sometimes from a conversation of higher education, that you are more than just your career. But especially when we have immigrant parents, especially when we're coming from marginalized groups, the only thing that our parents want to do is to tell us to get our education, because that is supposedly, right, the great equalizer. And it's super important, but there's so many other parts of us, and you're seeing it here. And those are the parts that kind of created glue for our relationship and our friendship, because we hold and see one another and all the texture, of who we are. Beyonce is just all over here, which is beautiful. So of course, right, there's so much more that, we're unicorns. Yes, we're mythical creatures. Yeah. And you can imagine, right, the ways that we also connect, through our challenges and our difficulty. Yeah. So I'm feeling you, Sharon. Let's, because time is going quickly. What are some other reasons why folks should consider, they should take a look at community college, especially here now when so many of us are learning remotely? Why should community colleges get a second look, or a first look?
Okay, I'll jump in there. I can say that the last couple of semesters, particularly this one, I have so many ASU students who are taking courses with me at the community college because they're online. So they figured, you know what, I'm getting an online course there, an online course here. And I know instructors who also teach at ASU, and it's different. The way they teach is very different than the way we teach. I know all of you, and I know that we teach with our hearts and we teach with passion. And we absolutely love what we do. We are passionate about teaching and learning, and they can see that. We give everything to our students. Those of us that know us know that we are 150% devoted to our profession. So we have the liberty to do what we want, which is kind of nice. So we are able to tailor our curriculum to meet the needs of our student population. And coming from underrepresented groups, I think we have an understanding of a lot of the life experiences that they bring with them to the classroom, that we can tailor our instruction to meet their needs.
This is my mom, everyone. Yeah, and I would also add that it's more common that you're going to have a smaller class size. So there are, I would say our largest classroom on our campus anyway holds what, 100? What is? Yeah, maybe about 100. I forgot that big room right now. The name.
The Choya classroom only holds about 75 to 90, I believe.
Yeah. And that's there's only one classroom like that, right? So the majority of our classrooms cap at about 28 to 32 students. So what else? What other reasons, Sharon or Zoila, would you say that people should consider community college?
So I would say definitely the smaller class size helps. Where I'm at, our online classes are capped at 24, right? And I think across the district, it's somewhere between 20 to maybe 28-ish. And so when you have a much smaller class and your faculty member is focused solely on teaching, you have much more active learning and engagement for you as the student, right? Whereas, when, for example, this was obviously pre-pandemic since it was like a million years ago, but when I took Social 101, it was 3 exams and that's it. And that's how most and a lot of classes at the universities can be, especially in those 100, 200 levels, which are the same levels that you would be able to take at the community college. And not everyone learns the same. Not everyone is able to be successfully or super successful in taking standardized tests. We already know that, the data show, God, I am the stats person here, that the data shows that people from lower socioeconomic areas, backgrounds, as well as people of color tend to do poor on standardized tests. And at the community college, you will have some standardized tests, of course, but you're also going to have more opportunities to demonstrate your learning, right? And in some classes, you might not even have an exam at all. I know in my classes, I generally give no exams, especially in the online ones, because I don't think it's a good way to assess students, right? The community college really is student focused. And that's not to say that a university isn't, but at a community college, it's a much smaller population. So you have, your professors are gonna know your name versus just, your number 450 or, whatever. So I think that's a really good option. Likewise, with some of our adjuncts, they're actually working out in the areas in which they are teaching, right? So if you are interested in an area, being able to connect with someone who's already working in that industry is huge because it's all about the connections, right? So it's easier than to maybe break in, find an internship, whatever it is that you're looking to do, being able to really utilize the faculty that are at the community college, whether they be full-time or adjuncts, it's a real opportunity for students that unfortunately a lot of them I don't think take advantage of, even though we encourage it. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, and I'll add too that the goal for community college is, well, I say not everyone's goal, but the institution is set up for you to transfer to a 4-year institution. So we are not knocking the 4 years at all, but we're a teaching institution, and it is baked into the system, right? That your classes should be set up. If you're meeting with your school counselors, enrollment counselors, it should be set up for your courses to transfer so that you get into that 2-year institution and you've already completed your prerequisites, the requirements in your general education courses. Go ahead, Zoila.
Yeah. I
want
to add something else real quick. Sorry, Zoila.
No, go.
Talking about the advising part, just because I was an advisor for so long. Yes, that is a big thing. And I know in Maricopa, we're definitely moving towards pathways, but that's actually a national trend where you have these articulation agreements. So you transfer almost seamlessly. And some places will, depending on the transfer agreements, will allow for students to transfer more credits at the community college than normal to the university. The other thing is data also have shown that students who start at the community college and transfer do better than those that start at the 4-year institution. And we do see a lot of students who start there, come back, and then plan to return.
And I would say that the reason those students do better when they transfer is because of the application piece. Is we focus on application of it. We just don't teach the theory. We teach it in a way that they actually use. I know I focus both in my introduction to psychology and statistics on applying it to real life. How do you see psychology in real life? My future nurses, how are you going to use the statistics in real life? When you see that next patient, I want you to make sure that you're doing your calculations correctly for that dosage, because one day that future nurse is going to be my nurse, right? And so I make it real for them. And that's what's most important, I think, is the application and connecting it to themselves and to real life. And it's the smaller classrooms. had online office hours this week. I'm actually hosting one in the evenings. I know my spouse wasn't very pleased, but I said, hey, I'm going to end my day early. He's like, sure, whatever. But anyways, he knows me. But I had 10 students come on, and I was like, what? 10 students. That's for an evening office hour is actually pretty good for pandemic. But it's one of those things where it's all about making a connection with students. And I will, if a student emails me with enough time, I'll email them, do you want to get on a WebEx? And I'll go over this material. And so you don't get that from ASU professors often, because they also have the publish and perish mentality. They have to do research. And I have to tell you, I love research. You guys all know I love research. I took a sabbatical to focus on how to incorporate undergraduate research into our community college curriculum. I love research, but I wanted to teach and do research on the side. And that's why I'm at the community colleges, because I want to teach, I want to connect with my students, and then when I got time, I will introduce them to research. You're on mute.
Sorry. Another thank you all. Another thing I would add, I clicked too quickly, is that, also the work is very interdisciplinary. So, I mean, y'all can comment on how it is at other colleges. And I should explain that the Maricopa Community Colleges District, we're a group of 10 colleges. And so not all community colleges are necessarily like that, right? But there are 10, and we have a lot of interaction with each other. But even just within our institution, we often would pull from one another's lectures. We would pull from one another's like experiences. So like I've used stuff from from Silvia, who teaches math, right? I've used content from her bilingual ed content, her math content, to illustrate concepts in a psychology of culture class, right? Sharon and I, like, we're the same brain. And like with that this like teaching psych of culture and the teaching like the sociology of race, like it was always easy, and we still continue to kind of to share content. There's in fact, I'm going to get off on a story here, but since I left, I've been wanting to make sure that I could access and transfer all of my material. And Sharon, there's some things that you shared with me that I'm like, oh gosh, I really want Sharon's lecture on this or that, because like it's content that I can bring right to anyone, even in kind of the public sector, right? So some of the things even that I do are maybe more lectures or speaking engagements or training series, right, for professionals or individuals in the working world. And I still use, right, the content that I created in my community college courses to teach and to teach people in the private sector. Go ahead, somebody wanting to jump in? No, I just heard. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to add too is that financial aid is available, right? In the same way that financial aid is available at four-year institutions, it's available at the community college level. Obviously, right? It's relative to the cost, but it's available. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
One of the things that I want to add there is that the community college, at least in our district, is really good also about helping students with some of their additional needs. Right? A lot of community college students have housing insecurity or might be homeless, as well as food insecurity, where they might not know where their next meal comes from. And, at all of our 10 community, well, I shouldn't say that. I know at least in most of our community colleges, if not all of them, they have food pantries, and we use, I know at Glendale, we just had earlier this week a food drive where people were able to drive through, whether there were students or community members, right? And we also have scholarships. Last semester, I was able to help 2 different students get some money through scholarships. So one didn't become homeless, and the other one was able to make her car payment, right? And so these types of services, I mean, these are some of the challenges that community college students have, but these are the types of services that the community college can help provide, which aren't always available or well known at different universities, because the assumption at a university might be, because it is just more expensive, that they might not be having these challenges. So I did want to kind of add on to that.
And I'd like to add to that I want to do a shout out to our counseling faculty at our Maricopa community colleges, because sometimes they are the resource for that information on housing insecurity and food insecurity. But we also can provide some limited counseling support for students and then connect them to mental health resources in the community. So,
and actually, I want to agree. Yes, all for free, all a part of, or what we have to say, it's all a part of your tuition, right? Because sometimes students feel like, oh, I shouldn't be using a service. And it's like, no, you're paying for it within your tuition, right? So if your tuition is covered, you are participating. The thing that I wanted to add too, that I think people don't realize, the value of counseling centers at 2-year and 4-year institutions is that when teens, and young adults are in that age range of leaving teens or entering 20s, it is a time when some mental health challenges, show up, they pop up, they present themselves for a lot of reasons, because there's a lot of stress, right? Kind of on the system, but also just developmentally, physiologically, things show up. And so that's the value of having a counseling center at any 2- and 4-year institution. And sadly, the only time we pay attention to that is when there's a shooting, right? Something happens, and then the counseling center gets the responsibility for, oh, why didn't you know about this student, right? So I just want to use that kind of as a teaching moment. We are running out of time, but so I want to ask one little question, for it to kind of take us out. I was gonna ask about self-care, but I'm not. I want to make it feel good. What do we appreciate about one another? What do we appreciate about having each other?
I want to share that I love being able to text Sharon complaining about ASU sports, because I live in a household that doesn't appreciate sports as much as I do. And I can text her and say, oh my God, that game was the worst. And I have always Sharon to back me up. So I appreciate that piece of our unicorns.
I appreciate that I can be my authentic self, whether it's also with Zoila and talking about ASU sports, the variety of sports that we watch, or if it's just, with all of you, just complaining about stuff, or sharing joys, right? I can be my authentic self. And there's very few people I feel like that we just in general can be authentic with. And so I think that's definitely a privilege and a blessing. And I'm so getting emotional. Oh my God. But I'm like super thankful for that, because that's a sign of true, not necessarily friendship, but family. So I love you girls.
Okay. And sorry. So I'm grateful for all of you. You all add something completely different to my life, yet so much. I can vent to you. I can share my joys. I can share my concerns, my frustrations. I cuss like you wouldn't believe with these 3, right? So it's a sense of family and support that is very unique to all of you. So thank you.
Sylvia, I'm laughing because you were taking off your scarf and everything, and I was like, what is going on over there? And your own little private summer, and I was like, se está poniendo desnuda over there.
I think I'm going through premenopause.
Okay, and this is so I appreciate doing life with you all, and it's I appreciate that only half of us were moms, before we came together, right, and met, and we have gotten married together, had babies together, laid people to rest together. And even though we don't see one another as frequently as we wish now because of the pandemic, but also because we've been split apart, we always manage to kind of come back to one another, support one another. And that's just invaluable. It's invaluable to have this level of friendship and to have this level of friendship with people who look like us, represent us. So I love you all so much. I'm so happy we did this. I know.
I love you.
I know. I could go on forever, but I won't. Okay, so I want to encourage everyone to have a lovely weekend, to take care of yourself, to relax. Next week, I'm going to have Dr. Stephanie Bigker. I'm really excited to have her. We're going to be talking about the Phoenix Indian Medical School, Phoenix Indian and Medical Center closure of the labor and delivery unit and how that's impacting Indigenous women here in our state. So, unicorns, love you. Bye-bye. Say bye to everyone.
Love you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Enjolie.